Hi everybody, welcome back. This is Chris Watty and I'm here today with Grant.
Hey everyone.
And we're really excited to welcome you to today's session, Breaking Through Stories and Reclaiming Your True Identity to Create the Life You Want. So a quick check-in before we begin. Grant and I have put together tons of great information in each module, and I want to emphasize it's not information, it's your being and action that will transform your marriage. And that action starts with you, working on you and with you. Yes, I know that your partner is, you fill in the blanks. And I also know that you have made the decision that you want a $1 million relationship, that this relationship is worth saving. It used to be amazing, but habits have developed, stuff's got in the way. So let's dive in. First check-in, what actions did you commit to in Module 1 and your first Q&A coaching session? Did you do them? If not, why not? What happened? How important are they on a scale of 1 to 10 for you? It's really, really easy to carry on the same as always. Do the same things you've always done. And guess what? If you do the same things you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. If you want to change, if you want transformation, if you're really serious about this, then now is the time to choose different actions. Put in those big rocks first, those important things, and Grant and I are here to support you all the way. So use us. So by now you've locked in your bulletproof mindset with strategies to keep it that way. You've created your relationship vision and you've got it up there where you're visualizing it every day. You're focusing on success, on what you want. You've got a daily awareness of your thoughts and emotions exercise underway. And you're doing the most important things, like we said before. You're putting in those big rocks. Week 1 was also about your values. What is important to you? That was the worksheet activity. You've got the traffic light to manage your upsets. And you understand the different roles that you might be playing in a relationship. Are they constructive, the ones that bring your relationship to where you want, or are they fragmented? You've got the 40-day challenge underway, a daily thought, task, and action. Make sure you're doing these things. And the key thing is action. Action, action, action. That's what will make the difference in this session and in this program. So today's conversation is part 2 of Who Am I? And this is all about transforming your being, breaking through stories, reclaiming your true identity, and creating the life that you love. Now, the purpose is that most people just exist. They just exist in relationships on autopilot. And when things aren't working, it's often because we've developed habits that aren't serving us well in our relationship. In this course, we become intentional about how we are showing up in our marriage, in our other relationships, and in life as a whole. We choose the best self that we're bringing forth. And we take the lead. This is a leadership program. How are we leading our life? How are we leading our relationships with our partner and our kids? And the underlying design principle of the $1 Million Marriage program is give a man or a woman a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach them to fish, you feed them for a lifetime. Apply this principle, truly get to understand who you are and then who your partner is, and you will be empowered in your relationships for a lifetime.
Okay, so the quality of your marriage is determined by who you are being in your relationship. It's how you're being, it's how you're showing up that's really going to determine whether you achieve the marriage of your dreams or not. It's who you are being and who you need to be to create the relationship of your dreams.
Yeah, so ask yourself, who are you being? Taking responsibility for that person. This session, we're exploring transformation, the creation of a new realm of possibility for yourself and for your life, where the limitations of the past disappear and a new view of life emerges. So you discover new possibilities for being and new opportunities for action. So your entire experience of being alive transforms. And that's for yourself, your relationship, and beyond. So how do we do this? How do we open up this possibility of transformation, you might be asking? So the first step is mindset, a mindset of openness. Are you operating from that mindset of courage, or are you coming from the place of fear? Now, at the same time, we need to be really aware of blind spots, those pitfalls. Blind spots are the things that we don't know, or maybe we can't see them at all. And these have an enormous impact on our experience of life. Most limitations are a direct result of blind spots. Breakthrough and transformation, on the other hand, happen when people free themselves from these limitations that they don't even know that they have. And secondly, transformation comes through questions. Now, this isn't a new idea. Over 2,000 years ago, Socrates discovered that when he asked great questions of his students, and they discovered their own answers, and they became really different people. They transformed, and this is the same process that we're using here too. We'll ask you questions, and we also want you to be open and ask yourself questions. Challenge your long-held assumptions, your beliefs, your worldview. This is the opening for transformation. Questions like, who am I? Who have I been? What is the impact on myself, on my relationship, and others as a result of who I've been? And what exactly is possible for me? What are those possibilities? And finally, of course, it's action. You make the choice to participate fully in this program. And I really love this metaphor of the dance floor versus being up on the balcony and thinking about where you're operating from. It's really like this in life. Most people play the part of spectator, watching from the balcony, a place of analysis, judgment, and criticism. It's a safe place to be because you're looking on to the dance floor. But in fact, you can be dead, paralyzed watching from this space, talking about the dance, and you have absolutely no impact on the dance. As opposed to if you're on the dance floor, you're fully alive, you're joyful, you're participating in the dance. And if I take this into real life, and not so many years ago, Grant and I decided that it was time for us to do something new, and we learned salsa. Now, this was new for us, and it was a place of action. And while we did feel happy and joyful and alive, at the same time, there was a little bit of, we were taking some risks. I think there was a few times, Grant, where we were tripping over each other's feet, and there was disarray as we're learning new things.
Yeah, there's a difference between being in the balcony when the teacher was teaching us and being on the dance floor and stepping on each other's feet.
Absolutely. And this is the thing, it really is, where are we operating from in life? Are we on the dance floor? Are we up on the balcony? You might be asking, is there a time when the balcony's a good place to be? Well, yes, of course. When you want to observe what's going on, and you want to do that intentionally. But the trouble is, it's not very helpful if that's your only way of existing and you're on autopilot in your relationship. So, you might be also asking, well, how do we get onto the dance floor in this program? And I know if you're a sports fan, then you might be preferring to think about the rugby field or the footy field.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of in New Zealand, we watch a lot of the All Blacks playing rugby, and we're all sitting around and we've all got opinions, on whether the ref has made the right judgment, and we're all criticising the players and analysing and explaining they should have done this or why didn't they do that. If you're in Australia, of course, it'll be footy or netball, if you prefer that. But whatever the sport is, it's being on the sofa or on the sidelines makes absolutely no difference to the game and how the game is played. And that's what this is about. It's about how you play the game of your relationships on the dance floor of your relationship, and not on the sidelines where you're analysing, explaining it in your mind, making things right or wrong.
Yeah, thanks, Grant. So look, how do we get onto the dance floor? So first things first, take responsibility for where you're being inauthentic, where you're pretending. And it's interesting that humans are the only animals who do this. And we're often very unaware of this space as well. And I think about when I was running our business when our children were younger, I really was like a hamster on a wheel, stretched, stressed, reactive a lot of the time. And it took one of our daughters to ask me the question, hey mum, when are you going to do what you really want to do, for me to have that insight to get off the treadmill, off the balcony and into action. And now 11 years later, I'm feeling way more satisfied doing what I love, working with people like you, helping you transform your lives in a very similar way to the journey that Grant and I have been on. And because we've distilled the very best of all the information that's out there, you can get into action and transform yourself way quicker than what we did in just 8 weeks within the container of this program. You know, and I know it's really, really easy to procrastinate. I know because I've been there. So it's about taking action. So how do you go about being authentic? You know, finding your unique, authentic, original voice. So what we need to do is understand our authentic self.
Yes, I love this quote by Dr. Phil. Your authentic self is who you are being when you have no fear of judgment, or before the world starts pushing you around and telling you who you are supposed to be. You know, reminds me of our granddaughter. She's only 5 months old. And you look at her and she's just authentic. There's no fear, there's no judgment. You know, she'll go to anybody. She's not picky about who she's going to smile at. You know, that's our essence. That's what we've got to get back to. And it's not something you've got to find. It's not something you've got to grow into. It's something you're already born with, and you've just got to let go of all the constraints. And we're going to show you what those constraints are, the masks are that hide your authentic self.
Yeah, so as Grant just shared, as a child, we are authentic, and yet we get lost as we become adults. And you know, it's a crazy process, and yet for most people, it's the reality that we experience in life. And most people, in fact, have layers of this inauthenticity. It's a protection, a shield, if you like, so that we have that's got us to where we've got in life. And so how do we know when we're being inauthentic? Well, the first indicator, we come back to the metaphor that we talked about last week, the emotions, those indicators. And our emotions, in fact, will indicate if we're experiencing dissatisfaction, then it's really likely that there's inauthenticity there. There's a gap between our authentic self, you know, who we really are, and how we're living life.
Yeah, and probably the key emotion that indicates that is frustration. You know, frustration indicates there's a gap. But not all emotions are bad. You know, emotions all have a positive outcome, but it's just sometimes we use anger inappropriately, or we're anxious when, you know, there's not actually a tiger in the jungle. They just become a pattern, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah, thanks. So look, discovering your authentic self. So what I want you to do when you're thinking about your authentic self and you're trying to get to that kernel of who your essence really is to think about, first of all, an area that you really care about, where you are experiencing a loss of power, a loss of freedom, a loss of self-expression. And because this is a relationship course, it's $1 million marriage program, then I'm guessing that area is going to be somewhere in the relationship space. And where you're noticing a loss of power, freedom, or full self-expression, it's sure to be that there's some inauthenticity there. So if I think back to Grant and myself, when we had young kids, the business and family and all sorts of things going on, we were playing different roles. For me, it was the role of being an exhausted pleaser a lot of the time. For Grant, your role was different to that. You played a different role.
Yeah. If there was a gap in my life and I wasn't happy, then I would kind of just get frustrated and withdraw and not talk about the issue. And so this would become a problem because Chris would want to talk about it and I wouldn't want to talk about it. And so the issue wasn't getting dealt with.
Yeah. And so while we were both well-meaning and, we loved each other, we just weren't aware of these roles that we were playing out. And we didn't have anybody at the time who was a great mentor. And this is really common too. We're trying to get along, do the best we can, and we don't have a guide to take us on the journey. So rather than noticing our emotions as indicators for what our underlying needs were, and for both of us, our needs were different versions of intimacy and connection. As the the tiger and turtle as opposites in the relationship, the needs were the same, and yet we expressed them in different ways. So what happened is we both lost our power, freedom, and self-expression, and we saw that in low energy and negativity. And I want you to think about what role you might be playing, and in your when you're thinking about this area for yourself. Grant and I talked about our roles. Frustrated withdrawer, exhausted worker. What's the role that you might be playing in this area where you're discovering a loss of power, freedom, and self-expression? And look at the roles that you might be playing. Are they fragmented roles, or are they constructive roles? Are you noticing the positive emotion with the positive action for the constructive roles, or are you noticing the negative emotions and the negative actions?
Yeah. So just to be clear on these roles, it might seem a weird term, but roles, you're always dealing with life. You're always working through life with a role. It's just a way of coping. And roles can be, as Chris said, fragmented, which are just two negative, a negative emotion and a negative action. And if you're in a jungle and there was a tiger, that would be very appropriate. You'd want to be feeling anxious, and you'd want to be withdrawing really fast. But, and you wouldn't want a constructive role in that situation. But most of the time, we deal with life with fragmented roles when we should be dealing with them constructively. Because, of course, when you're happy and calm and connected and in a positive emotional state, then you're always going to deal with life better in most situations. So the key about roles is just being aware of a fragmented role and converting it into a constructive role.
Thanks, Grant. And this is the process of self-discovery, and this really is the process that we're developing in today's session. So now I want you to stop the video, answer those bullet points there, an area you care about where you're noticing a loss of power, freedom, and self-expression. Identify the role that you're playing, and then we're going to take that through and explore the vicious cycle of stories. So stop the video. Great, so now you're back. You've done that activity. Now that we've done this, what we're going to do is explore the vicious cycle of stories and how to create a new possibility for yourself and for your life.
Okay, so in looking at stories, most people really have no distinction between what happened, which are the facts, and the story about what happened. The story is just something you've constructed, which is your version of events, it's your interpretation, and then you then perceive whatever's happened as being real. You think that the story is real. And the whole key is when you can differentiate between what happened and the story of what happened, then, and you can let the story go, then you're free then to break, an unwanted pattern, which is a pattern of behavior, like a negative emotion, like, as I said before, being frustrated and withdrawing. That's a negative pattern, and that's always going to occur in a threat. And then, but the pattern keeps on going because the story keeps it going. And we're going to explain a little bit about this. So let's give you an example. So here's the story of what happened. So Chris, what's happening with you in the story?
So when I'm thinking back to the days when our children were young and we were running our business previously, I really was that exhausted worker. I would get up early and I'd be work all day till late at night, or 10 o'clock, I'd just collapse on the couch and that would be it. I was busy with the business, I was busy with the kids, I was busy with everything. Grant got a little look in if he was lucky, but that was my story. I was the exhausted worker.
Yeah. So if we look at it as what happened, it's just, we've got kids, we're working, and Chris has got a role, she's busy, I've got my role in the business and I'm busy doing that. But I make up this whole story about it. My story is that, I deserve better than this. Chris, she doesn't care about me. We should be more intimate. Why aren't we more connected? Why aren't we doing more things together? And and there's always a should or a why or a could in a story. And then Chris's story would be.
So my story was that I'll relax, I'll take time out when everything's done. But of course, being a bit of a perfectionist at the time, and I can still answer to a little bit of that now, it was never all done. I would never get to relax until I just collapse in a heap at the end of the day, like I said. So that was my story. I'll relax when everything's done.
Yeah, so people are always interpreting what happened. They're always making meaning of something. But the world out there is kind of empty and meaningless unless somebody comes along and makes up a story about it. I'm sitting in a room now and it's probably 22 degrees. I think it's just perfect. Whereas
I've got my big woolly cardigan on to keep me warm. So we both perceive it differently, and that's what a story is. It's a perception.
Yes. So there is no meaning about the temperature in the world, and yet we give it a meaning. And then the meaning has a huge impact on the quality of your life as a result of it. So interpretations aren't bad. It's useful to interpret that there's a tiger in the jungle to keep you alive. But the problem is that you get stuck in these stories, and then when you can distinguish between what happened, like as a video would capture it, and then see that there's evidence for your story and understand it's your story and let it go, then then you're free to live life a lot more powerfully. So now these fragmented patterns of behavior that we're talking about that are unwanted in your life, they come from stories you've created based largely on your reaction to past events. It's just the best way you knew of how to cope with the situation as a child. And those situations, that way of coping actually doesn't work for you now. So as a child, I got frustrated or I got anxious and I withdraw. Well, that doesn't help now when I need to sort out a problem in my life or relationship. Now, stories, there's a payoff for them. There's a benefit for keeping a story, because a story makes you right and others wrong. It's a way of kind of compensating and justifying the situation, and it helps you to control or dominate or avoid control or domination in your life. But the problem is, even though there's a positive psychological benefit to it that gets you through life, like as a child, if you're in danger of being bullied, for example, at school, you might learn to be anxious and withdraw from bullies. So, that keeps you away from it. But they also come with a cost. Like there's a lot of suffering goes on in a story. You get a lot. There's always going to be a loss of energy. There's going to be a cost to your relationships. There's going to be a loss of, your true, authentic self. You're just not being the kind of person that you really want to be in a powerful way. For example, if I'm an angry controller, which is a fragmented role, that's not a role that I play. But when I tell myself the story about how somebody else is wrong and I'm right, then I'm going to feel justified. Yeah, I'm justified to be angry, and I'm justified to control the situation, because, they're to blame for this, and this just becomes my way of dealing with it. As a child, you're going to learn that by being angry and controlling the situation is kind of the best way to manage, a lot of chaos or turmoil. But then, if you're right and the other person's wrong, then you become the effect. And they are the cause. And as the effect of anything, you're powerless. You're a victim. And as a victim, it hides your ability to be able to respond, because you really can't respond to anything that you are the effect of. Do you get that? So what I want you to do is take a look. What is the cost of your story that you're running? When you can identify it, look at the cost, because when you can see the cost, then you can begin to let it go. Most people are not aware of the cost. There's a huge cost. There's a cost in your relationships. People get separated, they get divorced, they have affairs, and to justify their story. There's a loss in your self-expression. You're not happy and joyful and full of energy. and what other ways is it costing you? What's the impact on your kids? What's the impact in your business and in your performance and your health? If you're anxious and stressed all the time, then that's like cancer that's just riddling your body and actually is causing you cancer and heart disease. It's one of the biggest causes. And the biggest cause actually comes from relationships. Whereas all the research shows that happy couples have much, much better health and live a lot longer. So I'm not going to get into that, but the key to unlocking the story is get back to what happened, separate it from the story, and then let this story go and create a new possibility. So let's go to an example on the next slide. So this is how to create a new possibility. So the first thing you do is see the story for what it is and then let go of it. As soon as you can see it as a story, it's no longer real. And that's the key distinction, because you and people do this all the time. You actually think, it's like people say, that made me feel that way. Well, nothing can make you feel anyway. It's just a story. And when you can let the story go, it's no longer going to have any, when you can see it and let it go, it'll no longer have any power over your life. And then you can create a new possibility, which is just a new way, a new role that you can play in life, a new way of being, where a new possibility might look like something like being more happy and more relaxed and more calm, and then being more connected. There are common new possibilities for yourself. So here's an example where you can create a new possibility. So in my example, the example is, the story is that Chris is busy all the time. She doesn't care. She doesn't listen to me. She doesn't care about me, blah, blah, blah. Victim. I've got to recognize that and say, hey, Chris, and get clear to myself that I'm blaming Chris. And I might even say to her, hey, I'm going to rock up and admit it. Look, I'm sorry. I've been blaming you, thinking that, you're busy and you're not spending time with me. And I realize that it's just my story, and now I'm going to let it go. And the impact is that the story is creating this frustration and this withdrawing. And so, of course, I'm not getting the love that I want in the relationship. So I'm being a dick, really. I'm just, that's what I tell myself, stop being a dick and stop, being a victim. So then what can I do? I can just take action. I can choose that this is my life. I'm in it. I'm in this relationship. So I'm going to take responsibility and then just go up to Chris and say, hey, Chris, can we spend some more time together? What do you reckon?
Yeah, and this is something that we personally have gone through quite a number of years ago now, the story that I'm going to just share with you now, but absolutely this process happened. And you can see, for this to become a reality, Grant, the turtle in our relationship needed to come out of his turtle shell, out of that place of withdrawing and being frustrated, and actually come forward into the relationship and make a request. And of course, we need to be mindful of the tone that we're using as well, and our conversations. So he made a request. He was keen for us to be going out once a week and actually having some fun. Well, deep down, I wanted that too, but I was too busy, as you've already heard. So we made an agreement. Grant would organise the babysitter, and I think you even cooked the dinner for the kids, Grant, if I remember.
Oh, I'll do everything. I'll be on my best behaviour for the whole day.
And all I had to do was show up and be ready to go out at the time that we went out, and we had a lot of fun. And that was one of the key things that actually kept us in connection. So for those of you with busy, that are busy, young children and things, think about your priorities, think about how you're showing up, and think about how you can turn those fragmented roles and those negative emotions into a constructive process in your relationship.
Yeah, okay, so moving on, the other problem with stories is that they are often linked with your identity. This is kind of where they come from. There's an underlying identity, an underlying meaning that you give to who you actually are in the world, that causes you to develop this pattern or way of dealing with life to compensate for this identity. So what I mean by that is, you know, for example, if I say, look, you know, I don't deserve to demand Chris's attention, you know, this might come from an identity that I'm not good enough. Now, a lot of people have this: I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not enough, and this comes from childhood, and it develops this role to be enough. You know, then you develop this pattern of behaviour to either please people or to withdraw and become anxious and ruminate and wonder why you know other people aren't spending more time with you or listening to you. You know, you become this victim. So the big question is, how can you give or receive love in your relationship if you're coming from a place where you actually don't love yourself and you believe at a fundamental level that you're not good enough, that you're not enough? And that not enough, not good enough, is your identity. Whether you know it or not, subconsciously everyone has got some form of I'm not good enough. And when you can transform this to I'm not good enough to I am good enough or I am enough, then this will transform a lot of those patterns in your life and the quality of your life. So really, let's just take a look at where your identity came from. So we form our identity, you know, like as the Jesuits said, give me a boy to the age of 7 and I'll show you the man. You know, your identity is formed in those first 7 or 8 years of your life. And they actually come from negative events that happen that occur with a lot of emotion. These events occur as a threat to your belonging. You know, things like when your parents argue, when you get bullied at school, when you're rejected by friends or family or told there's something wrong with you, then every child needs to feel that they belong. It's a fundamental human need. And when the threat to your belonging is triggered, people, especially children, subconsciously make it mean there's something wrong. And there's not just something wrong, but there's something wrong with me because of the association with the negative event. Like it must be my fault. You know, mum's left or dad's left home, it's my fault. You know, there's something wrong with me. It's because I'm not good enough, that I'm not loved enough by my parents or by my schoolmates. You know, is some of this starting to resonate with you? So let's make this real. The first thing to do to identify this identity is to identify the unwanted pattern in your life. So for me, the pattern is feeling anxious and withdrawing in a group. And others might have patterns like feeling anxious or trying to please everybody or even to be angry and control the situation. You know, these are patterns that you might want to transform. So when I look at my own childhood to see where this pattern came from, the first time I experienced this was when I was 6 years of age. So picture me here, I'm going to school on one of my first days at school, and I went up to 2 boys in the playground and I asked them to play. And they told me, go away, you're too big. And I walked away feeling very sad because I felt rejected, like, you know, I don't belong. And as I said, belonging occurs as a major threat for any child. Now, I made the situation mean subconsciously that there's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough because I'm too big. And so I withdrew. And I compensated for this by telling myself, look, you'll be okay on your own. And then all my behavior became about making sure I was okay on my own. And funnily enough, this is where your strengths come from. So then I became entrepreneurial and self-sufficient and good at individual sports and, you know, withdrew in a group, or in a group I become really good at listening because, you know, I didn't want to speak because I didn't feel like, you know, there was some that I'd get criticised or that I felt something wrong with me. The thing is, all my strengths were built on that fundamental lie that I'm not good enough. So I developed this kind of compensation pattern in my life that to be good enough, I would be okay on my own, but I'd also achieve. I had to achieve to prove to everybody that I was good, so that would satisfy me. You know, and so I'd seek to achieve in sports and business. However, it would never satisfy me for long because it was based on, it wasn't actually true. I was already loved. I didn't need to do anything to be loved. That's the key. You don't need to achieve or to please other people to be good enough to belong, because you already are. Just look at a child, like a grandchild. She's beautiful. She's 5 months. She's good enough. She as she is, there's nothing she needs to do. As a child, the facts were I was just a child on the playground, and 2 boys said no. It didn't mean anything about me. But my subconscious story was, I'm too big. I don't belong. It was just a story. It's not real, because I hadn't made the distinction between what happened, the facts as a video would record it, and the story of what happened. My identity, my whole life was built on this foundation. So if I can transform that, if I can go back to that, which I can, then I can go back to myself and reinvent my identity so it serves me. And so I did. I went back and I could see that this old way no longer served me well, and then I transformed it. And when I did, this was a breakthrough for me and in my relationship and in the rest of my life. So let's take a look at how we do this. So as an adult, firstly, to transform this pattern, I've got to recognize it. So my pattern of feeling sad and withdrawing or feeling frustrated and withdrawing happened for me as a child on the playground. And so now as an adult, I get clear that I'm okay as I am. I don't need to withdraw from a group and to be loved and accepted, to be my true, authentic self. And then I could visualize myself as an adult walking up to myself as that 6-year-old boy and actually giving myself a hug and saying, hey, mate, those boys, they don't mean anything. You're okay. You are good enough. You are loved. Your identity is you are okay. And I transformed my identity. It was really, really powerful, and really got clear in my heart that part of me that felt like I wasn't okay was just a child, being upset. And then I could transform that to I am okay. So, I want you to do this for yourself. Go back now and create a new identity for yourself. So imagine yourself as a child in a situation when you first felt really, really upset. Feel the emotion, feel the empathy, see yourself as a child, and then see yourself going to your childhood self and giving yourself a hug and telling the child within you that you're okay, that you are loved, that you are enough. And then there's a process you could do to anchor this so you can remember this whole process. So whenever you get triggered, you just anchor it into your body. So for me, when I feel that emotion of feeling frustrated, I just put my hand on my heart, and that's a way to remind me that my new identity is I'm okay, and it's just a way of anchoring that and enabling me to quickly access it. Okay, so let's take a look at where we're going from here. So what I'm going to do is pass it on to Christine, and she'll get us back on track.
Great. Thanks, Grant. That was awesome. So make sure you do that activity. Stop the video if you haven't had a chance on the session to do it, and continue it in your the week ahead. So this is your $1 Million Marriage weekly action plan to break through your stories and reclaim your true identity to create the life you want. So here's your action plan. Firstly, reflect on your upsetting emotional childhood experiences and create new possibilities and identities. Now, the thing I want to say here, and Grant, you probably want to say something more about this, is make sure that you keep yourself safe.
Yes, so it's really important. We don't want you to go back and re-traumatize yourself and remember, really, really negative emotional events that you don't want to revisit from the past. And so all I want you to do is just to get clear that if something really bad happened, if there was some sort of abuse or violence, you know, just be clear that, you know, you developed a way of behaving from just to keep yourself safe then. And you don't need to keep on doing that now as an adult. But I want you to go through and just recognise when you do get upset that there is a way that you can heal and soothe, you know, that inner emotional child within you, and that's a way to break that pattern.
Thanks, Grant. So, you know, just remember, keep safe. Grant and I are here, we're both professionally trained, and we'll go to some, you know, seek other professional advice if you feel that you need it. The worksheets for this week are Love Connection and the I Appreciate worksheets. You know, as appropriate, these are the ones we recommend. If they're not for you right now, then choose something else. This is, you know, we want you to customize this program so that it works for you. You've got the 40-day challenge, daily actions. Continue with your week 1 activities. You know, if anything's not making sense, go back and revisit those videos. And it's daily action that's going to make the difference. 1% better every day. And if you're not sure if you're on track, refer to your daily questions checklist. And as we come to the close of this session, I'm going to share with you a poem that talks about the human illusion. You know, the illusion that so many people that we work with experience. And I want you to notice if you recognize any of this in yourself. So there's an island fantasy, a someday isle we'll never see. When recession stops, inflation ceases, our mortgages paid, our pay increases. That someday isle where problems end, where every piece of mail is from a friend, where all the nations can go it alone, where we all retire at 41, playing backgammon in the island sun. Most unhappy people look to tomorrow to erase this day's hardship and sorrow. They put happiness on layaway and struggle through a blue today. But happiness cannot be sought. It can't be earned. It can't be bought. Life's most important revelation is that the journey means more than the destination. Happiness is where you are right now, pushing a pencil or pushing a plough, going to school or standing in line, watching and waiting or tasting the win. If you live in the past, you'll become senile. If you live in the future, you're on someday isle. The fear of results is procrastination. The joy of today is a celebration. You can save, you can slave, trudging mile after mile, but you'll never set foot on your someday isle. When you've paid all your dues and put in your time, out of nowhere comes another Mount Everest to climb. From this day forward, make it your vow. Take someday isle and make it your now. And this is your call to action today. Take your someday isle and make it your now. What is possible for you right now? What actions are you going to take today and over the coming days, this week and this program? And between now and next session, be sure to take consistent daily actions. Focus on success, scheduling your time to create and bring forth your new possibility for life and relationships. I'm Chris Watty.
And I'm Grant.
And we'll catch you in the next session.
See you later.